Yeah, and if you are betting that the Falcons are back in practice today and looking for some more iron sharpening iron and looking for some more good on good, you're definitely going to see it. And of course, we will bring you all of the good news from Flowery Branch that we can. And same thing in Flowery Branch, by the way. I think for the most part, Jarvis, it's been 2 weeks of really good reports out of Flowery Branch as far as injuries are concerned. So my thought went there when we were talking about Max Fried as well. And not just injuries, but seeing guys like Kyle Pitts come back and be the strong Kyle Pitts that we saw in his rookie season, right? So that's one of the critical pieces, if you will, that is back that the Falcons have to make Desmond Ridder successful. But you can actually look across that entire offense. And I will even say, and I'll explain in a moment, but I'll even say look across the defense to talk about all the pieces that the Falcons have put in place to make him successful. Now, the one I think is maybe the most critical, although you could say 1A and 1B, but I think that the thing that Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith have done, the biggest thing to make sure he has everything he needs to be successful is to give him an offensive line that he can get behind, no pun intended. And that
Yes.
starts with everything from deciding that Caleb McGarry can indeed come back to shore up the right side. And depending on how things go with Matthew Bergeron or Matt Hennessy, but mostly we're thinking Matthew Bergeron, especially what we've seen as Hennessy's been day to day, they went out and drafted him. So I think having consistency and having strength on that O line was arguably the biggest thing that Fontenot and Smith did to put nine in a position to be successful. But what do you think is the biggest thing they've done? Or do you feel like they've put him in position to be successful?
I think so. Because here's the thing: they beefed up their running game, and by bringing in one of the best running back prospects to probably come out since Saquon Barkley. So when you think about that aspect of it, like, hey, because there's a weapon, and even I take it a step further, like who is Bijan Robinson rooming with during training camp? Desmond Ridder. You know what I'm saying? So they're trying to put as much as they possibly can on Bijan Robinson as far as like, hey man, we're going to lean on you, and not necessarily in the run game because you got a guy that's your workhorse back. Like you don't have to worry about giving Bijan Robinson the ball, turn around and hand it off to him 25 times a game. You can have 20 touches. Hey, you can have 10 runs or passing the ball at 10 times out of the backfield. So that's and what that creates is a safety net or a check down option for Desmond Ridder. And when you think about the type of offense that you run, you mentioned the offensive line. You bring it back 4 or 5 starters, and you have a guy who was a first round prospect, coming out, and you got him in the second round. So you assume that hey, he has the talent. It's just a matter of time, right? And if you can have time because you have so much veteran. You have so many veteran presence, so much veteran presence around him. So, and you got guys like you talking about iron sharper iron. On the other side, they're going to test him as well. So he's going to get a very good picture as to what to expect in game one against the Carolina Panthers if he's the starter. Matt Hennessy, still day to day, in September. So I
Right.
think that I feel like the Falcons have done enough, to surround him with enough talent to be successful. I'm in a space where I kind of want to see how it plays out, and I want to see where Matthew Bergeron is if he is a starter once he start getting those live reps in the preseason games.
Indeed. And I think you can even give credit on the defensive end because they also went out and got a lot of veterans in Calais Campbell, David Onyemata, Caden Ellis, etc. And you have some players who are second year players and third year players that are in a prove it situation. So, like Arnold WKT, who should be getting after it, if you will. And I think the reason I mentioned them is because if you get out of those players what you need, what they're going to do is essentially flip a field for Desmond Ridder. And what you want him to do is not have to always march 80, 70, 90 yards down the field. If they can give him a shorter field to work with because they keep pinning the other offense back, I think that's also a positive as well of what can be or what can be a benefit to that Falcons offense. Now, speaking of the defense and some players that may need to show improve and of course could be beneficial to the offense because if that DB room gets off like we think it will, that's the other piece that can put the offense in a good place and Desmond Ridder in a good place because they'll be picking some balls off, unlike anything we saw last year, unfortunately. And
Right.
again, giving Desmond Ridder a shorter field to work with or being able to even score, dare we say, and giving him the opportunity to not play from behind because we think that's a critical point as well. But Jalen Hawkins is one of those guys. It's been just really interesting for him. You
Right.
can kind of call it a prove it year for him because it's been kind of up and down, up and down. You know, fourth round pick coming back from the Thomas Dimitrov era, who in 2021 kind of worked a little bit like maybe where he might be again this year. He was a reserve, but he worked his way into a starting job at safety last year, only to potentially be back in a reserve position this year because they brought in Jesse Bates. So we don't kind of know exactly what will happen with him, but I do feel like it's a critical year for him because honestly, I don't want to say show improve, but then I kind of want to say show improve because at the end of the day, he's the guy that, hey, again, no pun intended, he's your ball hawk, right? He has the
Mm-hmm.
most interceptions these past couple of seasons for anybody on that Falcons defense, and he's forced more than he's forced. I think you would say more than fumbles in terms of fumbles, more than fumbles, forced fumbles. That's what I'm trying to say than
Right.
anybody else. So he's got a lot to bring to the table, Jarvis. But in honesty, in your opinion, how important will he be for that defense, and what role do you think he'll actually play in Ryan Nielsen's new look defense?
To be honest with you, I think he's going to be a 5-2 guy or a 3-2 guy, however you want to put it, because he's a guy that can come in and play the slot for you. You
Yes.
know, in that big nickel formation, he can be that third safety. He can actually come and blitz for you because he's a really
Yeah.
good tackler. And
Yep.
also, you know, you can put him in, you know, your dime packages as well because he is a ball hawk. He's always around the football. So,
Yep.
and I even asked Arthur Smith about him, you know, about like, because we know Arthur Smith always talks about versatility, right?
Yes.
Like that's the way of the NFL. Like Dan Quinn talked about it as well. So every coach wants to have guys that you could put in multiple spots, and I think Jalen Hawkins actually speaks to that. Like he is the
Mhm.
definition of that. So when you have a guy like who has that starting, you know, capabilities last year, like you said, I thought he did a solid job last year.
Yeah.
But when you bring in a high money guy like a Jesse Bates, and then you got a second round pick in Richie Grant, who kind of made some strides last year too.
Mhm.
It's kind of like
Mhm.
you're odd man out from a starting roster spot, so to speak. But I think he's going to be a weapon for Ryan Nielsen. I think he's
Yeah.
going to use him in a space where like, hey, I'm gonna have you come in on this down, or I'm gonna have you in these particular package. And I think it's gonna be from a week to week thing. And I
Yeah.
think Jalen Hawkins is gonna be up for that task.
Yeah, and I think you just hit the nail on the head. I think we're going to see packages where there are five DBs on the field, and he's going to be that fifth DB. And it'll be to your point because Ryan Nielsen sees something that he can take advantage of in terms of a turnover. Because we know that's one area we don't talk about very much, but that has not been an area where the Falcons have been in the plus column in the last couple of seasons. So yeah, Jalen Hawkins is probably the guy that they can bring in those special situations as that fifth DB to really kind of be that ball hawk for them. And you also made a great point, which I agree with as well, which is he has progressively improved his tackle rate, right?
Right.
And brought his missed tackle rate down. And we've actually seen that. We've seen it in the stats, but also we've seen it in the eye test. So I think that's important to note as well, because there are going to be some expectations that, hey, if we're putting you out there, just like we've got these big body pass catchers, other teams are going to have these big body pass catchers too. So we're going to need you to be out there making sure that whether it's a running back trying to get to the second or third level, or whether it's a wide receiver that, like you said, the quarterback checked that guy down, and now you've got an opportunity to keep him from going off and making a little 7 yard dump off become a 27 yard uh, reception and advancement of the chains, then that's
Hmm.
probably the guy that you're going to bring out there. So yeah, he's definitely another one that we said we'll be watching to kind of see what the Falcons do with him, both in practice as well as in preseason games, to then maybe inform us of what they're going to do for him during the season. So we'll keep you guys posted on his progress. But what do you guys think? I mean, Jalen Hawkins is still a legitimate starter type who can give the Falcons something, we believe. But what say you, everydayers? Let us know. Don't forget to drop some comments in the chat when you check us out on YouTube. And of course, don't forget to download ATL Day Ones wherever you download your podcasts.